Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben, and as you can see, Chris is not here today, which means that we have a special impromptu session, classes in session, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to mix it up, and mix it up we are going to do today. First of all, you can find us on our socials, SC Insider 100. You can find us on Soundcloud, Spotify, all of those other audio platforms, and on the YouTube, search for us, Supercoach Insider. So I'm going to record this. We're going to do a little bit of an impromptu, as I said. Welcome to the danger zone. I might put a sound clip on that one for our audio platforms this week. Danger, danger, danger. 3 weeks out, he is gone. You have to get rid of him. Get rid of him, he is gone. Don't get rid of gone. Wait a week on that one. We'll get into that. So basically, I'm going to give you a little rundown on my observations for round one. We're going to keep it clear, simple, to the point. Then we're going to get a little bit of social interaction. I'm going to call Swiz, our good friend Swiz, who is a veteran of Supercoach. We're going to get his opinion on what he would do for the rows, the danger fields, the rookie situation as to who's important, what some options are that he would consider and why he's going that way. Then I'm also going to call Jordes Supercoach. I've got his number, so I'm going to give him a call as well. Hopefully this all works out well. I might have to edit it all back together and then put it up on the line. So that's it. We're going to mix it up. We're going to get a little bit of opinions here. First things first, though, we're going to crack. This is a tinny. Oh, that one had a little bit of froth on that tinny. I like it. And because Chris isn't here today, we're going to do a little shout out to Chris. We're going to do a double down. Now, if you can't decide at home, ladies and gentlemen, folks, just double down. Why not have both, as the little girl says in the Mexican ad? So, alrighty. Now, firstly, I'm going to talk about my side. And I was so confused. I was torn all weekend because of the late, you don't know who's coming in, so you're trying to make some decisions and then you don't want to handcuff yourself. Unfortunately, Chris got handcuffed. He had Luke McDonald, a late out. He got in and changed it, luckily. McDonald, I still think, is a couple of weeks away from returning, so he came in and got Houston. Now, Houston, Chris has a problem. I might try and check out his side as well, because if we can hang shit on Chris, why not? He's not here to defend himself, and we're all for that. We'll call it banter, the banter zone. So for my team, now, it was a little bit confusing. I'm going to bring it up here. Let me see if you can check it at home. All right, let me try and move that across. And that is my team on the screen for those on YouTube. I ended up going with Lloydie. I went with Ryan. A little concerned with Ryan, with Young doing quite well. Ryan, probably first game back in. He didn't set me alight, but it was his first game back in, so I think I have to stick with those primos. Laird, I went with Stewart. I went with Clark and Highmore. Cozzy and Sharp on the bench. I went with, this is my changes that I'm thinking about making. Now, I actually had Lockie Neal. Let me go and reverse these trades. So I had Lockie Neal in there. I had McRae. I had Josh Kelly. I had Dunkley in the midfield. I then had Caldwell in the midfield, and he was the one I was tossing up with. Now, I considered Taranto. I nearly considered not getting in Braun, and I nearly had in Rowell. This close. I haven't had Rowell on my side all year, and I was like, if Gold Coast have a great start to the year. They actually play Adelaide. They played North Melbourne really early. Rowell's going to towel it up. I could be a genius and stick with the competition. But lucky I didn't. I nearly got in Taranto, and then I was like, okay, but with so many unknowns, I thought what I'll do is I'll keep 107,000 in the bank. I brought in Caldwell. That then gives me room, so I could move Caldwell up to Taranto. I could, if things don't work out, I could then change things up and go Caldwell into Zach Williams, and then switch Clark back into that midfield rotation. So I have 5 deep there. If Impey doesn't work out, I'd have enough money to move him to, say, a Heppel, etc., which is why I considered it, or go a rookie up to, say, if I missed, I could go like a Saunders or a rookie that isn't doing well into a Dow if he kicked off and that kind of thing. So that was what I went for. I went with a little bit of flexibility. It is going to set me up a little better this week. Caldwell, I'm not so sure on. He got a lot of the ball, had a good roll, but he butchered it. Now, my observations. The inside midfielders, the ones that can get contested balls, still can score really well. Titch had 2/3 of his possession as handballs, and he still dominated. He had a lot of possessions. So the accumulators are still going to do well. Clary, perfect example. Now, those who get the ball and butcher it, they really suffered. So Taylor Adams, shit score. Caldwell should have gone 100 plus easy. If he was actually an elite kick, he would have gone well over 100. I think it was like 108 fantasy and 74 Supercoach because he handballed it to people's feet. He kicked it over teammates' heads. And one of them, I was so upset. I was watching the game, and I'll get into this story. Watching the game, and Caldwell got tackled someone, free kick, holding the ball. I was like, bang, there's my boy, 4 points, tackled him, great, now he's getting a kick, lines up, kicks it over his teammate's head. Clanger. I was like, you fucking dipshit. Like, my God, kid. Not good. So I'm thinking about holding fat with him. I've got most of the rookies here. Now, my only issue, and thank you for Supercoach Elites for hanging shit on me for bringing in Henry. 1 minute before the game, I'm there and I'm like, oh, maybe it was just Richmond. Henry's playing. So I was looking at him or Jones, and I was like, Henry could be quite agile and mobile. Maybe they rate him. Maybe it was just Richmond's defense. He's more expensive. So I was like, so 1 minute before the game, I brought him into my team. Then I had less than 60 seconds to go, oh crap. When I traded him in, he's on field. So I'm like, off field. He then became emergency, did horrible. So could be worse. Yeah, so the only one I'm missing out on is Jordan. Now, I'll probably wait the week for him. If Berry doesn't do well, I might actually bring in Jordan earlier and put him on field instead of Braun. We will see on that. But Dangerfield, you have to trade. My perception is I'm really torn. I could go Dangerfield, trade him out, bring Dunkley into my forward line. I could actually go and bring in a Zach Williams into my defense and bring Clark into that midfield. It'd thin out my midfield a little bit, but Williams isn't owned by much. But again, I have the cash, and I definitely have the cash. I could bring in Dusty Martin. I think he looked really good. I think this format could really suit him. But, you know, it's one of those things where he is going to possibly have a few down games. His average against his opponents coming up isn't that great after Hawthorn, so he's one of those ones where I think it's pivotal. So many that don't have Dusty, that have Danger, are going to jump on him. So it's kind of one of those things, do you try and float with the pack? Because if he goes really big and you're the one that's not on, it's going to hurt you. Or if he doesn't do so great, it could actually work out in my favor if I don't get on Dusty just yet. So I have the cash. I'm thinking about getting in Clary just to, you know, bulk up my midfield a little bit more. But then it minimizes my options as in getting rid of Caldwell, so I'd sort of be stuck with him. So interesting, which is why I think the Danger to Dusty is not a bad option, because then that frees up more cash for me next week. And I'm definitely considering Walsh. I thought he looked really good. I posted on Twitter. Unfortunately, I'm now kind of on the Walsh train. I think Walsh looked really good. He's classy. He can get contested ball. He's good on the inside and the outside, and he's fit. And we saw Graham, Walsh, these fit guys, Brayshaw, they just kept running all day and they just held up. Now, whether that's going to continue or whether that's just because it's at the start of the season and they're fitter than everyone else, I'm not sure, right? But the people who were running and carrying, your Brayshaws, your Smith from the Bulldogs, McGrath, Walsh, the run carry types did very, very, very well. A lot of the extractors from defense did pretty good as well. So it's going to be interesting. Now, we've only had a preseason and now 1 game sample size. Don't go crazy. Don't start jumping on all these people you haven't had all season. For instance, you know, Boak has great games, right? But he also drops like 4 or 5 80s in a row. You know what's going to happen. There's no point jumping on someone after their great score like Dusty. He's not going to average you 158 for the season. There's no point jumping on thinking he's going to average you 158. He only had, I think it was 2 scores of 150 or more in the 3 seasons prior to this. So that's his 1 big score. I don't know if he's going to go bigger. He could have gone 200 that game. I swear to God, he butchered so many, which makes me think maybe I should get him because this format helps him more. One-on-ones in the forward line. He had quite a lot of CBAs, but Cotcham wasn't there. So should you get him? Lots of questions. Now, yes, this is my side. I'm actually pretty happy with it. Warner did pretty well. Campbell, I think, will help. He'll do better in dry conditions. When he had it, he kicked really well. Mills, I had in my side for so much of the preseason, tossing up between him and Ryan because you can't go Lloyd, Laird, and Ryan and Mills. That's all the same buy. And I actually had Mills as the other guy. And then after he got knocked out, I was like, hey, you know what? Ryan could actually be really good because he's not owned much at all. And that kind of backfired on me this week. So there you go. That's my team. That's what we're sticking with. Now I'm going to start. Let me just have a little bit of a look and see if we can find Chris's team. I'm also going to now have a look and try and call the Swiz man and see what he's doing with his side and what he recommends. So let's see how we go here. Let me just mute this channel. And let's get him on the line. All righty. So this will be interesting. And we're joined here with Swiz. Swiz, how are you today?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Just chatting to the audience at the moment. Chris has pulled a bit of a whammy this year, so he's out for today. But as you know, the show does go on like The Greatest Showman. We keep the ball moving. Now, do you have Dangerfield or Rowell?
I did start with Danger on one of those late-minute decisions that kicked Dusty out of my side and put Danger in, which is making me already pull my hair out early in the comp.
Yeah, yep. So, yeah, I'm same. I got Dangerfield as well. It's an interesting one. I did consider Dusty, but, you know, when it came to Dunkley, Dusty, I think you could only really start with a couple of those guys. Anyone that went midfield, you know, the mid-price deep, they're the ones that had your all the rookies that actually did really well, like Goulden, etc. They were on their bench because they had so many mid-prices. They were playing Impey and Dow at F6 instead of actually having a rookie on field. So I think we did okay though.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And like I was still happy with my score. I scored 2,100 on the week last weekend, but it's just one of those annoying things where Dusty goes ham. Like I was expecting him to go very well against Carlton, but not as well as naturally he did. And then Dangerfield to do, for actually Geelong, just to completely stuff it up against Adelaide. And it hurts now that he's out for 3 weeks. But I know a lot of people are facing the dilemma of Dangerfield and Rowell out, so we'll see if we can fix that.
Yeah, I agree. Rowell was the interesting one. I think it's really sad, like, as in, if there's not too many people that you actually try and really barrack for, and I think no matter what team you actually like, Rowell is someone everyone wants to succeed, and to see him get hurt, I think that's it's a little bit painful, but it hurts more for those that actually have him, and half the comp had him, which is probably where I think that now if you didn't have him, you're kind of a little step ahead of everyone else. You have one extra trade up your sleeve, unless you have Dangerfield, then you might be one step ahead of those that had Rowell and Danger. And that's the big issue at the moment is where to go, because Rowell was definitely a cheap price point. There's not too many around from there. And like, what do you think now? So you have half the competition now need some options. And do you see maybe one or two people really spiking in their ownership this week?
Absolutely. And I was just having a look at some of the ownership out there and already the changes that have been taking place. So that's kind of interesting in itself. So I'm just trying to pull it back up because I was just looking at a couple other things.
Well, it's interesting. Walsh at 543 is definitely one who I am looking at, but for me, it's kind of like, like your favorite band. So I used to like Simple Plan back in the day. They were this, pop sort of punky kind of group.
I was listening to them this morning.
Yeah, well, see, I loved them. I was so big on them. And I was like, yeah, Simple Plan, I'm so cool. And then like a million teeny boppers just jumped on and ruined it. Do you know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden it's your favorite thing's no longer cool. And I feel like it could be like that this week. Everyone's going to jump on because they need options. They're going, oh, Taranto is good. Walsh was good. Dusty, if they don't have him, like the other half of the comp, then I feel like their ownership on those three players is just going to go absolutely astronomical.
Absolutely.
So would you jump on or would you let everyone else take that risk, Swiz?
It's one of those things I was just thinking about, and I was just having a look through, like, because my Dangerfield dilemma at the moment is if I swap, who do I have? Campbell, and move him to the forward line, naturally I can get a midfielder. But I went without Jordan last week. I was banking on Melbourne having players to return. So I'm planning that in my head. If Jordan, now with Harms out, has another good week, I'm going to have to get him in, and I don't have any more balls to move around unless I trade out one of the rookies, hopefully, maybe underperforms. But then I need to make sure I've got enough cash to, turn a McNeil or a Lazio or someone like that into Jordan. So that's, I'm finding it a little bit more difficult to go, okay, I want to go out and get a Mitchell or another midfielder, which might ruin my structure more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, same thing I considered. I was like, oh, I can get Zach Williams and switch, Clark into my midfield, but then all of a sudden I've only got 3 premiums, Caldwell, Clark in the midfield, and it looks a bit shit, So I think Highmore holds his job security a little bit better. I think Jones is now injured, so Bergman could have some better job security. So he's someone that could actually do well this week with Bonner and Jones now injured. Bergman could actually do well this week, and that'll make it more interesting. I think Chapman will probably get named as well. He did really well last in the Waffle. I think there's a couple of defenders that could actually now pop up, which could be interesting and shit timing all around. But I don't think it's too bad. I think Highmore keeps his, and if he's on your field, I think you feel pretty good. I think if you have Highmore at your D5, then I think you'd be feeling a bit sketchy right now.
Yeah, for sure. I went massive in the back line. So I've got all of Lloyd Laird, your Ridleys, Daniel Stewart, and Highmore is currently my D6. But I've got Sharp at D8 with Clark swinging with him. So even if Highmore misses, I know I can throw Clark back there. So we've only really Whitfield, who looks like he might miss majority of the year. And then at the Mills, I'm really happy with my back line. It's set. And, everyone outside of Highmore scored over, and Lloyd 98, but scored over 100 last week. So, unlike a few others who might be sweating, I did see a few teams with both Clark and Young. Young looked really good last week, so they'll be hoping that he continues on to find the footy back there. And for a couple of Freo's injuries, I'm sure his job security's set for the time being.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chapman's definitely one to watch. And if, Sharp could definitely get dropped this week. I think that, who's our boy? Oh my God, Brisbane Lions, Eli Smith. Yeah. I think he'll get named. He did really well. I think, what did he get? 14 disposals and a half and a couple goals or something before they pulled him?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
the only danger for Smith is facing Geelong first week, and that he could be in for a quiet night down at Geelong. Especially, it's pretty well. Naturally, it's a lot wetter up in New South Wales and up your way at the moment, but it's still pretty wet down here in Melbourne. So might not be the best night for a debut for him, but you never know. He might be in the end of a couple, and hopefully that'll keep him in for a few weeks.
Actually, that's true. That's a good point. Just off the top of my head. The only rucks that did well this week were rucks in the rain.
Yeah.
So more contests, more scrimmage, more hit-outs could be a good option, actually, if any of them are playing in the northern states. Might not be a little bad option for a sneaky VC there, or particularly in draft leagues if you're going that way. So interesting. Now, okay, so let's go through. If you are torn between Taranto and Walsh, which way are you going? 50-50?
Walsh, 100%. I was at the game. I'm a big Tigers man, as you know, Ben. And, and I was messaging you before the game saying Walsh looked so good in the warm-up, and that just continued throughout the day. He's their number one man, as good as Patrick Cripps is as their captain, and that Walsh just had it on a string. And I can't wait to see what he actually does in wins.
Yeah, I know. If he gets 120 in a loss, he's going to towel up. And it really hurts me to say, because you know that I hate losing to Chris. I'd almost concede it right now, but I'm like, it's almost like Cripps is now like the facade. He's the bulk in the show to take the pressure off, and like, hey, look over to the left while you get raped on the right, like it's this, that's a bad terminology. Sorry everyone. But like it's this whole facade where look over here, look at this big hulking man. And then Walsh just goes and sweeps and pickpockets you and then runs off with the ball.
Exactly.
I think it's crazy, and he is good value for me. I was kind of on him, but it was one of those denial things where you're like, no, like she hasn't moved on, no, she still, likes me or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, no, I was just in denial. I think Walsh could push that one sort of, I last time I was saying like maybe 110 at max, but I'm thinking he could definitely push like that 115. I think in his wins, he could definitely tail up. So I think Walsh for me as well. Taranto played a lot forward too, didn't he?
He did, and that's the worry there, because the way GWS will swap some of their mids around, Kelly's always going to be a lock in there, but they've got to play their captain Cornelio in the guts as much as possible. And when you've got young Tom Green, who can't really play anywhere else, Hopper can't play anywhere else, there's not much choice but to put Taranto forward and then have him rotating through. So as well as he scored on the weekend, I'm really off the Taranto pick.
Yeah, I think that's probably helped by the wet weather, and once the ball kind of goes forward, it gets stuck forward a little bit more, whereas in normal play, I think it'll get rebounded out a little bit more. Cornelio was the surprising one, had a lot of CBAs. Kelly, not as many, but I'm not too surprised with that because we spoke about like the McRae types and the Kelly types. I think with the outside game on the spread, Kelly's someone who can just get into around the ball if there's a stoppage and then spread out anyway. And I think the game could really suit him well. So I think that's a bit of an interesting one there. All right, so you've gone the Walsh train now. Say you have Dangerfield, you're not looking at going down, you don't have Rowell, you've got Danger. Would you go any of those midfielders, assuming you can switch through? Would you go a Dusty Martin, or would you try and go through and try and pick up, a McRae, a Clary, Titch, Kelly, Merritt? Are you trying to pick up the one you've missed?
Yeah, because and you are too one of the 38% without Dusty at the moment. His ownership's already gone up 11% this week.
Oh wow! I told you, him, Walsh, and Taranto are going up by 20% each.
So I've got it in front of me at the moment, and it's all Dusty. Quite a few are jumping on Boak, which I just do not like.
Oh, that's horrible.
And the reason I don't like it, his best two teams that he plays against are North Melbourne and Fremantle. If you go back his last 2-3 years, he's powered them up. So you've already missed that North Melbourne score. So now you're relying on Fremantle. Essendon this week, yes, but then he'll naturally drop off. He drops off against a lot of the other teams because they have so many good players that can go through there, and it's not all about both. So, you've missed that score, and that's why I kind of don't want to jump on Dusty at the moment, because I was not starting him because I was expecting, he'd go 100, maybe 105. But he's going to have games, especially this week, that he's been in the news all week, that, Hawthorn will go after him and teams can't allow him to do what he did against Carlton, or they're going to just face the heat of the media. So,
I think if anything, teams they've come into the new year, they've gone, oh crap, these rules will help Dusty. And Dusty he still played forward half. He didn't really go into defense, but he was definitely chasing. He was like the crash, the tow truck company, right? Anyone that had the ball, Dusty was kind of following contest to contest, trying to get the ball off whoever had it. There was like a tow truck company following people, hoping for an accident. He was just like, hand me the ball, hand me the ball, hand me the ball.
Exactly. And people got to also remember Cochin was out, and though Cochin doesn't have the Supercoach effect these days and that, he's a midfielder, pure midfielder. So that'll mean they can rest Dusty forward or play around at that half forward flank more, with Koch back looking likely this week.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's almost tempting to be the point of difference and not go with Dusty for me at the moment. I might bring in a Clary. I can afford it, or a Titch. But again, Titch, I think he was slow starting. He only towed up because Essendon allowed him to. 2/3 handballs doesn't suit me very well. But again, Titch does Titch things. So it's an interesting one.
And he does. And the only question about him last year was the coming back from injury. But he's, we saw as the year went on, his form, I think there was 2 or 3 weeks that he went 130. He still can go those 160s, and just does find a way to rack them up.
He does. I think the back end of his year, he averaged close to 120, didn't he? Like, he definitely ramped it up.
He did. He definitely did. Yeah. And like the Tigers are usually not bad to score against in the midfield. Yeah, they got Geelong, but then after that, it's Freo, Melbourne, Adelaide. I think they got North Melbourne and the Suns in there. So Mitch could have some really massive games, and we know how much of a fantasy pig he is. And so many possessions, and North Melbourne, the Suns. No disrespect to sort of those lower teams, Adelaide, but Tom Mitchell on his day, he could be going 40 touches.
No, I agree. He is definitely a consideration. The only downside for me is he has the first buy, so I'm like, do I want to trade someone early that has the first buy? However, Danger had the first buy, so it kind of evens out the field a little bit. All right, Swiz, last question I'm going to go with now. Must have mid prices and rookies. If you don't have them already, who are you sharpshooting? Just a handful. What's off the top of your head?
Well, one, if I can just touch on the last subject because we haven't touched on him, and because I know like Walsh is probably my number one choice. My number two is actually Brayshaw from Fremantle. I love his role. I love their draw. Freo have such a soft draw for the next 7-8 weeks, and I think it's him, Sarong are the two in the midfield, and then it's Mundy, Fife, Chera, sort of rotating around depending on the stage of the game. So, yeah, it's going to be, for me, for Dangerfield at the moment, it's going to be between, or Rowell, it's going to be between Brayshaw and Walsh, and it's probably something a bit different, but I guess it comes down, like I still look at the whole season view and then look at my buy structure as well. And as you were saying with Dangerfield before, it doesn't muddle up as Tom Mitchell, but I'm a big fan of Brayshaw.
Yeah, no, and again, I think he fits in with the running carry types, the ones that are fit, because previous years, you'd be able to get contest to contest, which is why I think rucks are starting to struggle a little bit, because in a fast-paced game where it's not wet, it's going past them quicker. They're finding it harder to get to the next stoppage, which is why coaches are now considering, oh shit, we might need some backup. I mean, I think Tom McDonald from Melbourne had some hit outs. So he had about 4 or 5 hit outs, because I think it's harder for these rucks to get to these contests. Now, whether that changes, I mean, we all know big boys take a bit longer to get their match fitness up. They're bigger specimens. They take longer to, get momentum, running downhill, the heavier boys will get there. But I think it's going to be interesting. And it's hard to say. I think some people are making rash decisions based on the start of the year. And we all know ruck starts slow. They've started slow for many years. So it's an interesting one there.
Well, it is. And you're right. We've seen the rucks, but we've also seen people, got to remember, just think about last year where we all jumped on to Viney or Howe or players like that because of one good score, and just can't jump the gun too early on some of these people. That if you weren't considering them pre-season, then I don't know why you jump on them now.
Exactly. So what you're saying is Boak is the Viney of 2021.
Absolutely, is the Viney.
He's better than Viney, but yeah, I don't mind that at all.
I've got a couple of Port Adelaide mates probably texting me already on that, going.
Well, what about Rockcliffe being emergency? That's the best thing as a former Lions player that I've heard in a while. That's better than Polek playing at 4 clubs, which will probably be next year.
Well, I won't go into my comments about Polek. I might leave that for another day.
Oh, it's okay. We're off the cuff here, but I do know, like, so Matty Grimstone. Now he has missed out on Zeeble. I think the important thing at the moment, if you don't have the Zeebs, McDonald's out for a couple of weeks. Tarrant is now out and injured, so I think he is the only real major experience and extraction point at North at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And we were sitting at the London Tavern before the Richmond-Carlton game, and I was big on Zeeble, telling him to get in, and he was telling me to get Dusty in, and we both didn't listen to each other's advice, and look how that worked out for both of us. But, yeah, if you don't have Zeeble, and at the moment 44% do, the other 56% of people should be doing everything they can to put him in this week.
Well, it's definitely a roller coaster. I mean, Zeeble was on 16 at quarter time, and I was like, what have I done? And you said it's a long game. Next minute, towels up. Do you know what I mean? Same thing happens in reverse. You see Dow gets like 50 at halftime, and I'm like, what have I done? Next minute, he ends up on like 50. Do you know what I mean? It's a funny game.
That was one of the worst second halves of footy I've seen, and and the only thing that outdid it was the 22 people that played for Essendon. I
was about to say that. I was just like, he switched off and, he pulled an Essendon. You beat me to it. I like that. So interesting. Yeah. So I think Zeeble, is a must-have. I thought Impey Impey actually had a pretty good role, had a lot of ball, butchered it a few times. He should have got like an 80 on that. I'm not sold on Impey. I think he could do worse. I think Warner could outscore him, which is quite upsetting. If you don't have Warner, I think he's a good option also.
Yeah, well, I'm just going through a few of these percentages and having a look. It still shocks me that 40% jumped on Danaher, but Warner's only in 23% of teams. I like his role. Definitely rates himself with the haircut and those pink boots and that. So definitely get on him. Well, Fantasia, I'm not a fan of. He's going to go 100 this week, but after that, the thing with Fantasia, because I saw a few people jumping on him, and you've got to remember Rosie will be back. So why Rosie's out, he's going to probably score well, but then once Rosie gets back in, his role will be just forward pocket.
Yeah, correct. And not only that, we saw with, Rosie and a couple others playing blockages for Dixon, etc. They play a real team game down there. I think in weaker opponents, he's going to do well, but on the flip side, he's not going to score 4 goals every week. So he's going to absolutely spud you up. But mind you, speaking of spuds, Motlop could be the one that actually makes way, although he is a run and carry type. So, it's going to be interesting there. But I think
that's just for this week. But then because they play West Coast and Richmond coming up after that, so I do expect to see your Rockcliffe and those sort of players back in the lineup for those bigger games.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that also would influence Boak with having Rockcliffe, etc., a little bit more around him. So I think it's interesting. Now, Golden, I think if you don't have him, Goulden, I think you need him. I think you need Rowell if you don't have him. Flynn, if you messed up somehow as your R3, you could probably wait a week on some of those. But if you're missing multiple, you kind of need to start now. I think Berry actually...
And that's with me with Jordan. Like, I can wait another week on Jordan, and I've just got to... That's where my thinking is, where I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I've got the cash in case someone like Dow, for example, does well, and I don't have that loophole option. I might have to still go up like a McNeil to Jordan, which is going to cost me $22,000.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm going to make sure I've got that, so I'm not burning a second trade just to get a rookie in.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking something similar with Berry. I thought Berry was impressive, mind you. He tackled hard, he ran hard, he missed a couple of targets, but I actually think they
first game he was really good.
I thought they really rated him. He was killing it early and then slowed off, but I think he'll be better for the run. Powell showed some good things, but again, I think just that first game nerves rushed it a little bit, so he'll get better. Braun actually was on like 0 for so much of the game, and I was just like, what an absolute muppet. Wet game, though, as a forward is always hard for your first game, but he actually really worked into it, and he was quite pivotal in the second half and managed to get to a 48, which I was really happy with considering where he started.
Yeah. And I agree with Braun. I see something like similar happen with Eli Smith this week if he gets named, where it might be a slow start in the rain, but hopefully he'll come into the game. But it's always going to be the case with small forwards, and you guys talked about it all pre-season. Rookie small forwards, especially in poor teams, are going to always struggle.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually thought Scott was really good as well for the Dogs. Butchered it a little bit, but I thought he actually provided some real good options there and could have easily gone. If everything works out well in a game for some of these players, if they connect to their kicks, they could easily hit 80 plus and go up in points. They're getting enough ball. They're just not silky enough yet, and I'm hoping they just get to work out what it takes at the level because everything's quicker. You have less time. Less time obviously puts more pressure on your disposals, so I think they just got to work that out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. My advice going forward would be making sure you've got the North, the Adelaide, your sort of Swannies, rookies for that because their job security is always going to be higher because you expect them to be lower on the ladder where they're going to try to pump games in the kids. My only worry being a McNeil owner is one bad game or Scott one bad game, they're going to be out the door because the Dogs should be contending this year. Yeah,
no, I agree. McNeil more than Scott. I think Scott provided a bit more value. It's going to be interesting, although the injury to... Who was it that got injured at the Dogs, the defender? Specky McGee. What's his name?
I
can't think of his name, but that does provide a little bit of security for some of those backs. I think JJ will probably come back into that mix now as well, which could help them add a bit of speed and dash, but it always helps when you win. So... like Kaczynski and Brockman, etc., they won the game, so generally there's less pressure on them because you win, and I think it's going to be probably a little bit more of the same. So I agree. I think if you have missing multiples of Rao, of Golden, of Goulden, Scott, Berry, etc., and looking at Jordan, if you're missing multiple, I think you might want to actually start making some corrections early if your rookies are completely shit.
If you're missing both Dangerfield and Rowell and you are missing one of those good rookies, no harm in taking a little hit. And they showed last week that it's not even a hit because they outscored some of the better premiums.
Correct.
But going one up, one down and having that, there's no problems having that cash for the week after and then jumping on because then you get a second game sample size and then jumping on maybe one of the premiums you like. So, yeah, that's one way of looking at it as well.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're sitting pretty like some of us are, we've got, because that's why I think guns and rookies mostly for me, I end up just putting rookies on field. I end up trying to go with Braun over Berry just because 59, I was like, after the surprises of, Flynn and Goulden, etc., you kind of like, well, fuck it. 59, I'll just take the risk and hopefully Braun does well. And then the first half, I was just like, I've just cost myself 50 points. Sometimes you just take that risk and you don't know. You see 3 games from these rookies, you get a better idea on who's on field and who's not. But it's always the risk you play.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying to you. It's a long season, so there's always going to be ups and downs, especially for these rookies. So you've got to ride it out, and that's my main advice for when people ask me. And I get a few people sending me their teams or asking for advice, and it's just like, just be patient. Don't jump out and start trading out your Grundys and stuff this week because that's just silly. And that, next week, Flynn could score 30 and Grundy could score 120. So you've just got to be patient, ride these first couple of weeks until clubs get used to the new rules and just getting their match fitness up.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think Gawn's going big this week. So, generally, and I think even Lachie Neale, I think these better players, it's, almost a hit on their credentials. And, some players are really, they play with pride, particularly, captains or, Brownlow medalists. I think Neil's going to be real proud this week. And I think he's going to come out there and absolutely try and towel up and play to the best of his ability, especially Neale after a loss. I'm probably going VC Neale into Gawn. I can't see Gawn going any better.
At the moment, I was just going to ask you about that. And at the moment, I've got Neale into Gawn. The only other option I was looking at is Gawn into McRae.
That was my other option as well.
McRae loves Marvel. I think that's the only true real options. A few have been saying, Grundy to bounce back. Pitten's actually a good defensive ruckman. So I expect Grundy to probably go about 90 this week because Pitten will just try to limit his ability around the ground. And that's the same. If Grundy does go to the 90 to 100 this week, once again, don't jump off because there'll be bigger weeks to come. But yeah, for your VC, you've got to have Gawn as either your VC or your captain this week.
Yeah, no, I think they're the two things I'm considering. For me, I can't see Gawn going lower than 100. I mean? If Flynn can go 140, and not only that, Hunter from that was actually splitting his ruck time with McKernan, and I think Gawn's going to towel them both the fuck up, more than normal.
Yeah, the only other one, if you for whatever reason you're one of the people that can have Neale or Gordon that, you could always look at VCing Lloyd or Laird this week, especially Lloyd, and that against the Crows, I can see him going really well. But yeah, hopefully you've got one of those Neils, McRae's or Gawns, and they'll do the job this week.
That's true. Even Mills could go well against Adelaide this week. Man, why didn't I put Mills in my side over Ryan?
Yeah, and we talked about it so much as well. It's the frustrating thing. For the listeners of that, Ben, myself, Chris, and another mate of ours, Brimo, we do have a lot of spend probably a bit too much of our time chatting away about teams and that. And
man.
I was flicking through our messages earlier today and we were talking about Mills Walsh, and that. And then of course we're like, no, let's go Lloyd. We've got to be safe here and that.
Well, I was going to go Lloyd, but even then, I think 70% of my teams actually had Lloyd, Laird, and Mills as my 3. And then when I was talking about bringing an extra one in, I was always going Stewart or Ridley, and I was preferring Stewart for some weird reason. It's interesting. And then when he got concussed, it's kind of like, why bring in someone who's concussed? Because if they get one more hit, they're out for 2 weeks. And, it could actually pay off in the end. But then, round 1, I was like, fuck it. No one's got Luke Ryan. He can actually really towel up disposals. And then next minute he goes 84. And then Mills just towels up. And again, midfielders, more consistency. I don't know. I think wet weather just helped Mills for sure.
It did, and it's going to help him this week. But as you said, and that's the reason I also didn't pick him because of the concussion. Round 3, he gets concussed. He's out for 2 weeks. You're in the same situation we are with Dangerfield now anyway. So that's the whole thing about not being too reactional about one good score. If they start putting 2 or 3 up, then, definitely jump on. But for now, all that pre-season research a lot of people do, don't throw it out because of one round.
I know. People considering people they haven't actually had in their teams all year, at least with, Mills and everyone else. We already did the research. They're already preferable to us. We just kind of went a slightly different way. And then sometimes you're like, fuck, I want to bring this person in. And at least you've already had them in your side and you know what it looks like. I think that's interesting. Swiz, thanks very much. I got to get moving. I got to call Jordes. Chris just messaged me saying his plans are falling through, and do I want a podcast? So I was just like, dude, it's same reasoning, right? It's like, and I saw someone who actually said this: don't chase the scores because it's like a dog chasing a car. You never get there. Yeah, so, exactly. And like Chris tonight, trying to chase a podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Now, thanks for having me on, Ben, and you boys do a great job in that. And I hope the listeners take this advice on and happy super coaching for everybody.
Mate, I'm sure they do. You and Grimo are veterans, and I take your advice highly. So lovely debut to you, Swiz. And I know we speak about you all the time on the podcast, but it's nice for some of the listeners to actually hear your voice.
No, and it's great. And I appreciate being part of it and that. And hopefully, we'll able to get up there to Queensland, sunny Queensland at some point, and actually do a show with you in person.
Well, you mean get up here, except for a time where Richmond beat Brisbane at the Gabba, and I see you outside. You mean one of those times?
Good times drinking before that game, I must admit.
Yeah, that was good. All right, mate, I'll leave you to it. Hey, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, B. Take care, buddy.
All right, mate. Bye. Alrighty, bang, bang, bang. Gee, he has some great insight, not going to lie. And they're usually Matt and Swiz. So Grimo and Swiz are our sounding board for Chris and myself. They watch a lot of football. They actually get to a lot more games than we do, which is kind of upsetting personally, because we like to actually, watch a lot of games, but they get to them and they have some really good insight. That's why I also think like he's really opinionated. Chris goes off on tangents, but his insight and what he actually notices in games is invaluable. I look a lot more statistics, but then when Chris actually talks about strategy and what they're doing and how they're structuring up, these are like the things that I miss. And I think having a group of friends that you can talk to and where they spot different elements of games, I think are invaluable. And it's no wonder that coaches have assistants and all the rest of it, kicking off. So I think that's really helpful there. All right, I'm going to just ring Jordes here and do a little shout out for Jordes. See if George is there. And then Chris is available, so he can help us with our Houston. Chris has a problem scenario where Chris had McDonald out, brought in Houston, and Houston completely shut the bed. So just waiting for Jordes if he's there. Hang on, it sounds like he's here.
How are you, boys?
Jordes, it's just me, mate. Chris Chris pulled out. Let's not make a pull out joke. And now he's available and saying, "Hey, can we podcast?" And we're saying it's, I was just talking to Swiz, one of our favorite listeners, and talking about it's like trying to chase. You're trying to chase a dusty score or chase a boke score. It's like a pit bull chasing a garbage truck down the street. You're never going to get there.
No. The interesting ones, Boke is, it's chasing hard with Boke.
Chasing.
I think with Dusty, it's an interesting one because we're not sure what level he's at this year.
Well, I think what is helping is that COVID means Dusty can't go on a piss bent tour for 4 or 5 weeks overseas. He has stayed more locally. He actually looks fit, and I think the rules might even help him, which is concerning in a good way.
Yeah, well, he knows that there's no Vegas at the end of the year, so he doesn't have a lot to look forward to. So he wants to focus this year. With Dusty, I think I don't have Dusty, and it was pretty hard to watch on Thursday night. It was. I'm thinking the play here is I don't have him. Those points are gone. He needs there's no way he doesn't get tagged pretty soon. We saw a few players get tagged. I think Short and Steele got tagged this week. On Fox Footy today, I think it was today, they were saying, are they going to reintroduce tags? Because it's more, let's focus on the team aspect, team defense, and more focus on individual players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's harder.
That's what David King was saying.
Yeah, it's harder to team defense when the ball comes in so quick as well, whereas normally they kind of stack up and then have everything all set. So I think tags actually could come back into fruition. I mean, Zach Merritt killed the first half, and then Hawks.
I think it was Shields.
He went to him, and then all of a sudden limited his effect. And if only Essendon actually read that playbook and put someone on Titch, then they might have actually won the game.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think, Dusty could definitely get some attention, and round one's a great example on how impactful he can be.
Yeah, I won't be chasing Dusty. I don't really have a way to get him in. But and you kind of hoping a little bit that he doesn't go off too much. But I just think it's inevitable that he gets tagged at some point, and then we just wait it out for a bit.
So did you have Rowell or Dangerfield or both?
Unfortunately, I have neither.
Oh, that's great.
So I have my week is completely open. I do need a rookie correction, but apart from that, I don't have to deal with that.
Which rookie did you miss?
Oh, I missed James Jordan. So okay. I just wasn't sure if he was good or not.
No, me too. I thought his job security was completely shit until he did really well. I think someone likened him to Simon Black, and then Harms has now broken his wrist or something, which I think actually increases his security. So now he is a must-have. Whether that's this week, if you're sitting pretty, you could probably even wait a week.
Yes. The thing is, I need to see how Grundy goes on Thursday or Friday night, one of the two. I know tomorrow it's Thursday night. So
yep.
We'll see how Grundy goes, and if Grundy convinces me that he's not going to bleed too much, I just want to leave my options open for trading the ruck. I think there's 90% chance I'll hold in the rucks, to be honest. But yeah, I think definitely I would rather wait a week because I've got to figure out which rookie to get rid of, because I have McNeil and Bergman who are a little bit dodgy right now, so I don't know which one of them holds their spot, and it could be up to their performance this week.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm happy, so I'll wait that one out. But yeah, back to Rowell and Dangerfield. Really tough spot. It is. I think Dangerfield might be a blessing out because Tom Mitchell's right there. Rowell's a really tough one. Did you have both or one?
Especially, I had Dangerfield, but I also had, because I was going to, I was just talking before, I was going to go like Taranto, but I ended up going with Caldwell, and I have 107K in the bank. So I've got Dangerfield plus 107,000. I can literally take him to anyone. So I'm thinking about Clary. I'm thinking about Titch. That's my spot. I'm actually in a pretty good spot, and I've got all rookies again except for Jordan. So I'm actually in a good spot there. We were just recommending before that if you're missing any of those key players, as far as Goulden or Rowe, then you want to make sure, Rowe, you want to make sure you bring them in. And then I guess for everyone else, like Berry and Scott, etc., they're kind of a wait and see anyway. I think Warner again, a wait and see, but he looked really good. Highmore. So if you're missing multiples, you're going to have to trade this week. Whereas otherwise, I think, as you said, you could be aggressive, or you could wait and see and sit for a week if you're sitting pretty. Yeah,
I definitely wait a week if you can. Obviously, if you have half of it is like you obviously need to get some of these guys in. For example, you don't have Gordon or Flynn; they need to come in.
Yep.
But at the same time, you got to figure out which rookie to get rid of. So if you have like Ollie Henry, then you just piss him off this week.
Oh, I've got Henry.
Oh, really?
I'll probably wait a week just because I was thinking about bringing Jordan in for him.
He's not playing, though.
No, I know he's not playing. But again, do you know what I mean? If you bring in, like knowing my luck, I'll bring in Jordan and then he'll get injured. You know what I mean? So it's
another thing, yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of those ones where it can't hurt to wait and see. For that one, it looks like Chapman might be getting a gig. Now, we're going to ask your opinion here. So if you were without Rowell and you had 50K, would you go Walsh over Taranto?
Yeah, I would. Actually, interesting on Fox Footy tonight, they were saying that that they should teams should tag Walsh over Cripps now, which I kind of agree with. And we haven't really seen Walsh get tagged. And then maybe we're putting too much focus into tags. I would be going Walsh. I don't trust Taranto. I didn't like his form last year, and while it looks like he's getting back to his best, I believe his forward time was quite high on the weekend.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like 70s. It was in my group chat.
Really?
Yeah, he played a lot of forward. Still had some CBAs, but then pretty much went forward after that. So it was interesting. So I don't like Taranto either. I think he did well because of the wet weather game. He's not someone that I'm completely sold on. And everyone keeps talking up how good his game was. And I'm like, cool, keep talking him up and keep getting those transfers over because his disposal is generally shit anyway.
Yeah, it's 57.
Yeah, exactly, which is why he's always limited. He is not the 110 to 115 player. If you bring him in, he's not going to be top 10. You know, he's a gap filler at best. It's not fantasy. I think Taranto, looks good, but he teases.
Well, I look at my team and I think like I need to bet against some players here. So like a lot of people that I did well this week have Taranto. So I'm gonna like pretty much like I'm not jumping on now. I didn't start him for a reason.
Yep.
I'm betting that he hurts those owners a little bit at some point. Whether it's just subpar, even 100 is a decent return for him, but with more forward time, it could be lower than that. I'm not sure. I'm still getting a read on Taranto, but yeah, I'm betting that he doesn't do too well.
It's interesting. So I mean, Dusty Martin's gone up 11% this week. Boak's gone up 7.3%, 9,534 fucking Muppets out there. Bailey Smith, I can understand if you're looking at, the run and carrying types do well, but it's a one game sample. Bailey Smith had great games last year and then followed it up with 60s. It's not a trend yet. It's a glimpse. Whereas at least Titch, you kind of know he's probably going to rack up and still score relatively well, hundreds for a low game, up into the high 170s if he completely goes ham. It's interesting. And now my concern is that Taranto, Walsh, all these people that are going to jump off Dangerfield and they're going to jump off Rowell are likely going to Dusty Martin if they don't have him, Taranto or Walsh. Or, as we can see, 9,530 Muppets have gone with Boak. So,
Yeah, with Boak, he had like a really poor 5-week stretch last year. It was like 80 average or something like that. And I always don't like starting with players over 30. And Boak's like 32. It just gets, I don't know. I just don't like it. Just historically, they don't do as well as the guys in better age brackets. That's my view.
I agree. And it's easy to do well at the start of a year when you're old, but you put full seasons in for, 23 rounds, and they'll probably want to even try and get him ready and save him a bit for finals. I think he's someone who could definitely taper off.
Yeah. So I wouldn't look at Boak. There's a few young guns in there, like the next gen mids that are just interesting, but I just feel like I want to wait them out. Like Bailey, I love Bailey Smith. The inside mid roll was not there. He kicked 2 goals. Did he even get 120? I can't remember.
He did well, but the problem is he shares a lot of the pie with, you look at even Treloar had an entry-level game. So if Treloar goes big the next game, is Bailey Smith going to go lower because Treloar played more outside anyway? So it's an interesting one for me. I think Smith's a danger because you're looking at so many quality players at the Dogs. Right, whereas you look at Brayshaw is number 1 for Fremantle. Yeah. He's number 1 on the inside. Same thing, he's fit. And then you look at Walsh again, fit. I'd actually say Walsh is probably more the number 1, even though it pains me to say, at Carlton, which is probably why he would get tagged. If someone can keep up with him or whether they run 2 players on and off to try and actually just counter him, whether he's going to be able to overcome it like Ablett did, but he's going to have to learn at some point when he gets more attention than Cripps, because Cripps has been kind of holding the shield and taking a lot of the pressure. So it's going to be interesting if everyone starts turning their attention to Walsh. Then what does Cripps do? Or maybe Cripps gets it and butchers it. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we still need to get a read on how much tagging is going to happen this year. I remember last year Bond got tagged the first 6 or 8 weeks, and then I don't think he got tagged once after that. This is an observation. Maybe tagging eases up later in the season. I don't know. Just because there's going to be so much attention right now. So I wouldn't be too worried about Walsh. I'd be happy to pick him. Brayshaw is an interesting one because his points per minute were pretty high last year. In his draft profile, the first thing you read is he's high endurance, and never
factored in
like
last
his time
year.
On ground.
Sure.
It never really factored into his time on ground, which is weird. But this year, it's actually okay. I think it's like 79, 80, and it was similar in the Marsh game.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Brayshaw's an interesting one. His CBAs sometimes just vary. Like last year, they were just high and like mid, if that makes sense, a fair bit. I think they just give him a lot of CBAs this year. I'm not exactly sure. That was a little bit annoying last year because it was towards the end of the year, it was like 160.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Another pre-season for him. Now inside mid, I don't mind it. I just feel I think there's 6 big dogs that are just like that will be there, and there's you can put a blanket over a few others.
For me, I think Brayshaw's the kind of type who could pull kind of like a McRae did back in the day, where he gets like a 107. It's nice, but it's not the best. Do you know what I mean? It's not standard worthy, where it's kind of like good enough, but then it's not as consistent where you actually hit that 115 sort of bracket where you want them. It's that kind of glimpse before he actually starts tailing up, and I think it is, not a bad little option there.
We're just not sure on the ceilings of these guys just yet. I know we've seen a bit from Walsh last year, but even McGrath, what's his ceiling like? He played a bit of wing in the Amy game. I don't know what his CBAs were this game. So it's with these younger guys, you're just kind of trying to figure out what's going on. But right now, if you're looking at 500k options and you've got Clark in defense, you can swing Clark in and go for a defender if you want. Whether that's whoever you don't have better, like Ridley, Daniel, or Stewart, or maybe Mills. Mills is probably a bit more risky.
Yep.
I'd be looking at those guys over. Would I look at those guys over Walsh? I don't know. I actually probably would, just because there's a bit more certainty. But yeah, Walsh I think he's a fantastic pick nonetheless. So he'd probably be my guy at that price in the midfield.
I agree. But I think my only concern is he goes from 10% owned to possibly higher. Although it looks like a lot of people are kind of jumping sideways. I think maybe some of the Rowell owners haven't even queued on yet that who they're going to. But I mean, Tom Mitchell's gone up 4.8%. He's gone from 4% to 8.8% in a week, and I think that's a lot of the Dangerfield because of how many rookies were forward mid, and you had your Campbells and everyone else forward mid, or they started a Dunkley in the midfield like I did. They have that flexibility to bring in a midfielder, and Titch comes out with a real big score, slightly underpriced, and they're like, sweet, 610K, I'm going to jump on that because it's basically the same price. I think Danger was 611.
Yeah, it's an easy swallow. I had 4 mid-forwards in my midfield, so I just had them everywhere. So I liked a few values and picks in the forward line. I think you just do it with Tom Mitchell. The thing with Mitchell is I think he got scoured really hard. I didn't actually watch the game, but from what it looked like, the 17 touches in the third quarter when the game they started coming back into the game. Pretty impressive from Tom Mitchell. So that probably got a lot of his scoring up. But we know he's capable. He got 39 touches. We know he's probably low to mid 30s. He's very capable. And another thing with Mitchell is, even though he had the shoulder surgery, which was quite a long time ago, and it sounds like they eased him in, it's the broken leg effect. It sounds like he's over that now. He made a comment today about, he's got a bit more power in his legs that he didn't have last year.
Well, I wish he would kick it more, because he's 2/3 handballs, and I'm like, mate, you have that many disposals, and I think he had 28 handballs and 11 kicks or something. It was just stupid. Although,
that's his game, though.
Yeah, although, mind you, I guess if you looked at a Hawthorn forward line, you might want to handball it sideways too. So, it's interesting, and I do feel what you're saying there. So I think it's interesting. Titch did do really well in the back end of last year. So for you, if you have Dangerfield and you could go to a midfielder, you'd pick Titch over as a price point over, say, like a Josh Kelly, over a Merritt if you had 10K in the bank.
Merritt's an interesting one. So he got shut down, but I think we all Merritt's got more. Brutton's playing in more midfield this year. I think that's because they don't want to lose him. They're keeping him happy. That's just random comment, but
no, I agree.
Merritt,
contract year too, so he's going to want to be improving. I actually watched this game. Meant to go to the Lions game live, and the baby was absolutely cracking the shits. Did not sleep. The partner was like, "Are you going to the game?" with this look as in you better fucking not go to this game. And so I chose not to go, keep the missus happy, make sure baby's all right. And then they both slept, which was kind of a blessing in a way, because then I could watch the game, start watching the Lions game, and at least I was at home where you could watch the Lions absolutely start to obliterate themselves and go, fuck this, I'm watching the Hawks and Essendon game, which was actually a really good game. So the tale of two halves.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how they lost that one.
Titch just started dominating, and they paid no attention to him at all. I mean, Caldwell was tackling well, but everyone else like Shield, McGrath, etc., were just too busy trying to get the ball. And even when they lost it, I think they were all set up on the attacking side of a contest, and they just got fucked from behind once they turned it over. So, yes.
It looked like Rutten was watching a movie instead of coaching. He looked a bit, didn't know what to do on the bench. So a few comments about that in the media. I didn't actually see the game, but from what it sounds like, Merritt was cooking in the first half, and just with the attention.
Yeah, I think the rules are set up to help him for sure. So
Merritt and McRae are the two. Maybe Josh Kelly as well. Kelly stresses me out though. Like I'm so precious with injuries. I took Stewart out in the last second because he had a groin injury last year and he had a minor quad issue. So I'm that precious. I'm sure minor stuff is fine, but that's why Josh Kelly just stresses me out too much. But I think he'll score well. It was a wet game for Kelly, so it's like that's not his game against the Saints.
Yeah, it was definitely wet. Although he was on like 93 near 3/4 times. So he was actually killing it in the wet. And then I think he must have got faded out or didn't actually have the greatest last quarter, but he was set up to go 120 and just kind of faded. So it didn't have that many CBAs for Josh Kelly, but he is someone who in a dry game would absolutely towel up. But once again, his ceiling is high. His base is actually still quite high. He didn't have the best game. He, chipped in here and there and really did link up and do a few good things, but he could improve from that for sure. I think he's a dry weather player for sure. And once they get it on the spread, I think those kind of types, your McRae's, your Josh Kelly's could absolutely dominate. And Merritt, I think, could actually come into that mix.
The inside-outside guys. Mostly they play inside, but they get a lot outside.
Yeah.
Kelly's a bit more outside, but I don't think it's going to hurt too bad this year. This year's probably outside production is a little bit up.
Speaking of outside production, what about Stevenson from North Melbourne? Now, are you on the Stevenson train or are you like he is way overhyped and they're missing too many players?
I only saw the first half and he was in the first quarter, he was on 9 touches. He was just everywhere.
Yeah, I think he ended up with 10 or 11. We know his talent
is really high.
Yeah.
But I have 2 issues with this. I have 3 issues, actually. I think it's 2. Firstly, his form last year was VFL standard. But we know his talent is there. So that still bothers me a little bit. But yeah, he looks really good. A few North players are coming back. And one thing I noticed, I played the first practice game, he played forward. The second game, he played a bit more midfield. But I think they've trained him in the midfield. But at any point in time, there's that threat there that he can go forward. Now, it seems a no-brainer, right, to use him in his current role because it's just the way he's playing. But it doesn't mean that the threat of him playing more forward isn't there. 350K, not really, no.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It can work, but I don't know if it will work.
Me either. And I think the outside run really helps the fact that he is an outside kind of dashy, flexible player. Now, being flexible, you said about how he played forward in the Amy series and then didn't actually do that great. This game did awesomely, and he was more impressive than I care to admit. But again, there's no Anderson wasn't in, Cunnington wasn't in, Dumont also wasn't in. And that's also my counter for people saying LDU. And I was big on LDU in the preseason. I was like, he's due for a breakout. And I still think he is. Yep. But again, no Anderson, who averaged awesomely, no Cunnington, who was injured, no Dumont. Now, those 3 come back in. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, does someone else push outside and then push Stevenson forward, etc.? So it's a doubt.
It's very possible. And that's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Tom Phillips. I have Tom Phillips, and his mid-time in the midfield was 50% in the Amy series, and then it went down to 10%. I thought it'd be a bit more than that, but that's just it's one thing to hope and think that something's going to happen. It's another of what actually happens.
No, I agree.
I think he probably holds that role and just it gets reduced a little bit with other players coming back.
Yeah, I always thought Phillips was the outside anyway, and I thought the outside role could possibly help, but due to be seen. Anyway, so Jordes, mate, thank you for coming on. There's a little quick one. Where can everyone find you, Jordes?
Jordes Supercoach YouTube channel. Just do weekly videos, probably 2 or 3. Do streams every now and then. So come say hello, leave a comment if you want. I'll reply to all of them. Also on Twitter, Jordes Supercoach, and Facebook. So come find me there. And yeah.
Wonderful. And you are very active. You post more YouTube videos than most people that I know. So I think you're doing very well there. Thanks for having you on, Jordes, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Ben. I hope the babies are happy and healthy, and I'll see you soon.
Well, everyone's asleep right now except me, so everyone's happy. I was actually, funny, quick side note, I was telling my mates, I said, I need to take up golf, and everyone's like, why do you need to start playing golf again? I said, because then you get 5 to 6 hours of fucking bliss. So obviously I'm joking, but yes, I'm like 5 to 6 hours of quiet. I'm like, yeah, I think I might start playing golf again. I got the clubs, I got the spirit. So,
yeah.
All right, mate, I'll catch you later.
All right, Bruce. Yeah.
Righty, bye. Alrighty, Jordes there. Now, quick. So this is a little bit of a long podcast, guys. Obviously, I understand that. We are trying to keep it to an hour or under, even 40 minutes to an hour, generally speaking. A little bit harder, some repetition because we're talking to different people. However, I think the key thing is getting different opinions of people who are worthy. Now, instead of queuing them into what everyone's saying, these are fresh, these are raw opinions. It's not repetitive where you cue them to say, this is what we're doing, this is what to say. So that's why there is some repetition, but hopefully it helps you that 2 people are backing up the same story, 2 people have the same views. So that's why I wanted to do it this raw way today and impromptu. The show must go on. Speaking of the show must go on, let's go and catch up with Chris. Let's call the Teddy Meister if I can find him. Here we go. And we'll see what he has to say for himself about Houston. We have a problem. Let's see if he picks up. I want to try and find Chris's team while we talk. I'll take this. He better answer. I'm going to kill him if he doesn't. Oh, he's sending me a different number. That would be right. I got to find it. What's going on? He has his work number with him or something. Must be other phone, he says. My gosh. He must have a black phone like a rugby league player. One of those blacklist phones. All right, here we go. This sounds much better. So raw.
Hello.
Teddy!
What's going on, guys?
Hey. Thank you for coming on, Chris, mate. Missed your face.
Yes, it's been a few days actually. You know, life gets in the way, and you know all too well, my friend.
I do, mate. You got to swing with the punches. Now we've captioned this game. So this week, obviously, danger, and we've gone with Houston. We have a problem.
Well, let's start off with danger, because I think you're in danger this week, in danger of losing 2 bets to me, I think.
Oh, you arsehole.
I was always going to leave with that one.
Well, hang on. McCluggage is actually more suited to these conditions this year. It's just that Brisbane has such a shit game that that's as bad as I've ever seen McCluggage, to be honest. And I will agree. I've tweeted, I've even spoken up Walsh this week about how good he looks. Now, mind you, Cripps was actually out averaging him at halftime, but he fell over himself and ran out of legs. So Walsh will never do that.
Yeah, I think definitely the longer quarters is going to help Walsh and hinder Cripps early in the season. But, I knew that before selecting him, so I suppose, beggars can't be choosers, and it's not your fault. Duff is just better than McCluggage, so... I'll take a 32 and 36 point margin after round 1. That's not a bad thing at all.
You're an arsehole. I'm actually hoping that Walsh gets tagged and then Cripps goes absolutely massive. And you know that Cripps is about to play Brisbane and go 190 at some point soon.
Doesn't he do that in a half against you boys, or isn't that,
I think it was. I think it was a half. Now I'm just finding your team, Chris. And I'll see if I can move it over. Let me have a look if everyone can have a look. We can see your team. There we go. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm looking at it too. Yes. So obviously the biggest thing that happened to me last week, I got a little bit, I suppose, shit in the groin. So LMAX laid out. I was actually very hungover. I woke up at 6 a.m.